Chapter 28:15. A calm and dignified voice rang out. The white-robed elder who had been standing beside Miao Ji stroked his white beard and walked out. As soon as the old man spoke, the surrounding elders quietened down. All of them stood up straight. His brows were filled with respect. The white-robed elder smiled kindly and said, "The recognition ceremony of the ancient Gu King will be held tomorrow. Send the ancient Gu King back to the place of the King of Venomous Worms and we'll talk about it after the ceremony. What do you think?" His tone was also very gentle. He did not force Miao Yi to hand over the ancient Gu King. Miao Yi looked up at the white-robed elder and chuckled, "Are you afraid that I won't return the ancient Gu King to the Miao tribe?" The white-robed elder, who was the great elder of the Miao tribe, smiled like a Maitreya Buddha and said, "What are you talking about? You are the future leader of the Miao tribe and the only candidate for the saintess. Everything in the Miao tribe will be yours, including the ancient Gu King. If that's the case, you don't have to ask any more questions." Miao Yi did not give face to the great elder and rejected him directly. "The ancient Gu King is with me. I will invite him out tomorrow." After saying that, he pushed aside the elders surrounding him and walked down the selection stage. The few elders were stunned on the spot. The fourth elder looked displeased and said, "Isn't Miss Miao too arrogant? She seems to be hostile towards us." The fifth elder frowned and said worriedly, "If Miss Miao refuses to accept us, it will not be good for the future of the Miao tribe." The other elders looked at each other and lowered their heads in silence. "Give her some time and she will believe in your loyalty to the Miao tribe." Miao Ji sighed as she watched Miao Yi leave. She stood up and a hint of melancholy appeared on her gentle face. "Rest assured, Lady Holy Maiden, we will definitely assist young Miss Miao." Seeing the Holy Maiden speak, the elders immediately raised their hands and placed them on their shoulders in salute. Miao Ji smiled and said, "Yi is too stubborn. When I ascend to the upper realm in the future, I will have to ask you to take good care of Yi." Miao Ji's words were also indirectly telling the elders. Miao Yi indeed had a close relationship with her. And she, indeed, supported Miao Yi. The few elders hurriedly lowered their heads and responded in unison. Miao Ji thanked him and walked down the stage. Great Elder Miao immediately followed closely behind. Miao Ji stopped in her tracks and raised her hand to stop Great Elder Miao from following her. She said calmly, "This saintess still has matters to attend to." Great Elder Miao froze for a moment before stopping in his tracks. Miao Ji continued walking forward. The direction she was heading towards was not the way back. Instead, in the seats, the first row on the right. Miao Ji walked at a steady pace. He had barely taken a few steps when he was surrounded by a few people dressed in luxurious clothes. Standing at the very front was the pitiful Miao Zhilian who was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. The people behind him were Miao Zhilian's parents and elders. "Saintess, please," Miao Zhilian's sobbing voice sounded aggrieved. However, Miao Zhilian did not have time to finish her words. Miao Ji glanced at her indifferently. Her gaze was very indifferent. It was just a glance, but Miao Zhilian's tears welled up in her eyes and could not fall. This saintess hates people who don't keep their promises. Since you agreed to the bet, then bear the consequences yourself. Chapter 28:16. Miao Zhilian's face was ashen as she laid limply on the ground. She covered her face as tears gushed out. She heard her mother's grumbling voice, "I told you, Sacred Maiden, and that slut's relationship is not ordinary, so what's the use of begging Sacred Maiden? Our family's face has been thrown away by you. Cry, 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 you only know how to cry. What's the use of raising you up and nurturing you so painstakingly? You don't have any foresight at all." Her father berated her furiously. Miao Zhilian felt her ears buzzing as her eyes turned black. Under this endless criticism and grumbling, she fainted. At the same time, Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she looked at Miao Yi, who was walking towards the sacred maiden's candidate room. She could tell that Miao Yi was feeling down. She stood up and chased after her. An arm stretched out. It directly pulled her into his embrace. The man's elegant sandalwood scent entered her nostrils. History was always shockingly similar. Yiqing Luo had learned her lesson this time as she conserved her energy and didn't struggle. I'm only going over to take a look at her. When her emotions have stabilized, I'll be back. The man didn't give any response after she finished her words. The hand which was on her waist didn't move at all. Yiqing Luo was helpless as she followed his hand and found a comfortable position in his arms. Then, Overlord, will you go with me? Dmo Xian still didn't reply. His long arm tightened around her waist. He lowered his head and planted his lips on her earlobe. His voice was low and husky, extremely sexy. Have you forgotten something? Forgotten what? Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes blankly. Above her head floated the man's low husky laughter. But this laughter, Yiqing Luo inexplicably sensed something. A dangerous aura. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled as she instinctively sensed danger and wanted to push the man away. But at the next moment, the man directly opened his mouth and bit her earlobe. Yiqing Luo moaned as her little hand gripped the man's robe tightly. You! What are you doing? Yiqing Luo's face was instantly dyed red. She really wanted to break free from the man's restraint. This restraint seemed to have a bad taste as it tempted her. Especially when the man bit her earlobe. She was unable to control the numbness that she felt as if she had been electrocuted. Her mind went blank for a moment. He felt as if all the energy in his body had been sucked dry. His heart was thumping, beating faster and faster. It was as if he couldn't control it at all. Before the ceremony, someone seemed to have promised this lord something. Dmo Xian grabbed the back of her head, preventing her from evading. His teeth were still biting on Yiqing Luo's earlobe. As he spoke, his warm breath constantly drilled into her ears. Yiqing Luo's petite body kept trembling. Her whole body was limp, and her eyes were wet with tears. She was about to go crazy from the torture. Her head was spinning. What did I promise you? Do whatever I want with you, including sleeping with you. Dmo Xian's voice was low and he sounded very happy. The young lady's innocent and honest response made Dmo Xian's mood improve greatly. His big palm clasped Yiqing Luo's waist tightly as he let go of her ear and laughed. This lord has already done what I promised you. Next, it's time to collect the repayment. Yiqing Luo struggled a little. We can talk about it later. This lord has no patience. Dmo Xian rejected decisively. Chapter 28:17. No. Dmo Xian still rejected. Yiqing Luo. Damn it, could they still have a pleasant conversation? After a moment of confrontation, Yiqing Luo was defeated. Then what do you want? Go back to the room, deal with you. Dmo Xian replied very decisively. Clearly, these words sounded very normal. But when it came out from Dmo Xian's mouth, it inexplicably carried a kind of seductive, colorful meaning. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth, stretched out her hand and pinched the man's tight waist. I lose to you. I'll go with you and let you deal with me, all right? Saying that, she twisted her little body and turned her head to the side in a muffled voice, expressing that she was extremely angry now. While she was angry, Yiqing Luo didn't forget to let Chi out. Then she gave Chi the instruction to accompany Miao Yi. Chi was such a small ball and looked adorable. It should make Miao Yi feel better. Dmo Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes, looking at Chi-Chi's lightning-fast figure. His voice was deep. I can't tell that this lord's woman is not a simple person. Yi Qing Luo gloomily shook her head and snorted, "It's good that you know, so. Overlord, what you need to do is to hug my thigh and listen to me obediently." The young lady's voice was sullen and tsundere, which made Dmo Xian's gaze became gentler. He laughed hoarsely, his rosy lips were even more gorgeous. "This suggestion is not bad, but let this lord try first, to see if this thigh of yours is good enough." While speaking, he had already grabbed the young lady's waist and carried her in his arms. There were too many people watching the show. He loved to tease the young lady in his arms. And he didn't have the bad taste of letting others watch the show. Especially, he didn't want anyone to see the shy young lady. Dmo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo and stood up. An anxious voice was heard from behind, "Overlord, please hold on." It was accompanied by urgent footsteps. Dmo Xian pretended not to hear it as he walked forward. Yi Qing Luo could tell that it was Miao Zhi's voice. Thinking of Miao Yi, she tugged Dmo Xian's collar. "It's sacred maiden, put me down." Dmo Xian pursed his lips, apparently displeased. However, he still stopped in his tracks. Miao Zhi happened to catch up with them. She took a look at the young lady in Dmo Xian's arms and hung her head down awkwardly. "Miss Yi, I have something to tell you. Do you have the time?" "Yes." "No." Two voices spoke at the same time. Yi Qing Luo glared at him furiously. "Dmo Xian, stop fooling around. If the holy maiden is looking for me, she must have something important to do. Don't tell me this lord's matter is not important?" Dmo Xian sneered. Miao Zhi felt even more embarrassed. Looking at the way the overlord was hugging Yi Qing Luo, he was looking at the atmosphere between the two of them. Miao Zhi more or less understood that she had disturbed the overlord's good time. However, she didn't have any extra time to wait for the next chance to talk to Yi Qing Luo. He thought of the way Miao Yi looked at him. Miao Zhi took a deep breath and spoke again. "Miss Yi, I'll only take up a little bit of your time. If the overlord is worried, you can come along too." Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as his thin lips moved slightly. Just as he was about to open his mouth, the young lady's eyes were sharp and her soft little hand directly covered Dmo Xian's mouth. The young lady's other hand encircled the man's neck as she leaned close to the man's ear. Chapter 28:18. Hearing the young lady's serious tone, Dmo Xian's brows rose slightly. Especially after hearing the young lady's serious words. Unknowingly, a smile appeared in his eyes. Yi Qing Luo leaned close to his ear and couldn't see his expression. But Miao Zhi could see it clearly. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. The overlord was like a madman, pampering a young lady named Yi Qing Luo and pampering her dearly. From the looks of it now, it was indeed true. Everyone could see that. The relationship between the two of them was really good, without any fake feelings. When Yi Qing Luo moved her little head away, she raised her head and looked at Dmo Xian solemnly. The man had already adjusted the emotions in his eyes. He looked noble and indifferent, like an ascetic young master. Dmo Xian pursed his thin lips as he raised his slender fingers and flicked fiercely on Yi Qing Luo's forehead. His voice was deep as he said slowly, "All right." Yi Qing Luo. Such a straightforward reply, why did it make her feel as though she had fallen into a wolf's pit? She felt that Dmo Xian had been rejecting her suggestions in various ways. Just to tempt her to say this sentence? No matter what. After hearing Dmo Xian finally nodding his head in agreement, Miao Zhi couldn't wait any longer as she invited the both of them to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. Sacred Maiden's status in the Miao tribe was extremely high. Because of that, the place where she stayed was the best location in the entire Miao tribe. And she had her own courtyard, far away from the other tribesmen. Outside the Sacred Maiden's courtyard was a huge nursery. The things planted in the nursery made Yiqing Luo curious. Those seedlings weren't the usual emerald green, but a kind of almost blood red. It looked extremely horrifying. Miao Ji took a look at the nursery as her lips curled. These are the food for the goo worms, used to nurture adult goo worms. The three of them walked past the nursery and entered the courtyard. It was another huge, lush garden like a forest. There was only one small path for people to pass through. On both sides of the small path, there were white hemp ropes which formed into a large net, blocking everything tightly. Through the web-like hemp rope, Yiqing Luo could see that the lush garden was densely packed with thousands of worms, crawling and squirming. Be careful. Don't touch the insect webs on both sides. Miao Ji reminded them gently, without any airs of a saintess. I'm sorry for making you come to such a dangerous place. It's just that I don't want a fourth person to know what I want to tell you. It's all right. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past those wriggling various goo worms. It's not bad to come here to broaden my horizons. As Yiqing Luo was speaking, her eyes had been studying the worm web, on how it prevented those goo worms from crawling out. He did not pay attention to his feet for a moment. He stepped on a branch that had spread out from the worm web. Yiqing Luo staggered as she fell forward. No matter how fast her reaction was. Unfortunately, this small path was too narrow. She didn't have anything to hold on to, and she was even more worried that she would pull down the surrounding insect webs. He thought that he would fall to the ground. However, in the next instant, Yiqing Luo felt a tightness around her waist. Immediately, the scent of a man's sandalwood scent wafted over. She crashed into Dmo Xian's chest. The two of them stabilized their footsteps. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief as she raised her head and was just about to express her thanks. Chapter 28:19. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened as she speedily withdrew from Dmo Xian's embrace. "Ah Xian, what's wrong with you? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" Dmo Xian did not answer. He leaned against the insect web behind him, his body stiff and motionless. "Are you guys okay?" Miao Ji quickly turned around and walked over. When she saw Dmo Xian's back leaning against the insect web, she stretched out her hand, wanting to support him. These insect webs are made from medicinal herbs which are the nemesis of goo worms. They are very sturdy and won't be damaged by collisions. It doesn't matter even if someone touches these insect webs as it won't cause any harm to the body. But Miao Ji's hand had yet to touch Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian had already braced his body and dodged to the side. He dodged. Dmo Xian's tall and sturdy body staggered and swayed. If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo's quick reflexes to support him, he would probably be unable to stand steadily. "Sacred Maiden, this insect web, after touching it, is there really no effect?" Yiqing Luo wrapped her arms around Dmo Xian's tall body, pulling him away from the insect web. Her expression was extremely ugly and her eyes were covered in frost. Miao Ji furrowed her brows and said with certainty, "I can confirm that I made these insect webs with my own hands. There's no mistake." After a pause, Miao Ji looked at the overlord, whose huge body was pressing on top of the young girl. A trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. "Unless the overlord is, where is the nearest room in the courtyard? Go there now. There seems to be something wrong with Ah Xian's body." Yiqing Luo interrupted Miao Ji's words as she placed all her attention on Dmo Xian. The man on top of her felt as if his body was on fire and extremely hot. His breathing was also very heavy. "Come with me." Miao Ji also knew that Dmo Xian wasn't willing to let anyone other than Yiqing Luo touch him, so she quickly led the way. Yiqing Luo supported the man, or more accurately, she carried the man. Dmo Xian's consciousness was obviously no longer conscious. His tall body and his strength were almost completely pressed down on her. Yiqing Luo knew that her strength was definitely not small. Casually grabbing a person's neck and lifting them up was also a very easy thing to do. But when he was carrying Dmo Xian, she only felt he was almost overwhelmed to the point of suffocation. She carried the man and followed Miao Ji for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. After passing through the garden filled with insect webs, there was a row of rooms on the right. Miao Ji asked Yiqing Luo to help Dmo Xian to lie on the bed. Can you remove the overlord's mask? Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened as she bent down and removed the mask from Dmo Xian's face. That peerless face was reflected in her eyes. However, this usually expressionless face was now filled with emotions. At this moment, his face was as pale as paper. His brows were tightly knitted together as if he was in great pain. Looking at the man's tightly knitted brows, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped. Little Luo, the man on the bed called out subconsciously. His hoarse voice was filled with immense pain. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned sour when she heard that call. She squatted by the bed and reached out to hold the man's hand, pressing it against her cheek. Ah, Xian, I'm here. Tell me if you're feeling unwell. Yiqing Luo had yet to finish her words of consolation. Suddenly, her shoulder was pressed down by a palm. Miao Ji's solemn voice floated over her head. Don't move, let me take a look. Chapter 28:20. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she quickly rolled up Dmo Xian's wide sleeves. The moment her gaze touched the man's wrist, Yiqing Luo's throat tightened as her pupils unconsciously enlarged. She saw. On the man's wrist, there was a red line, like a blood thread, extending from his palm to his wrist. On one look, it was as though Dmo Xian's hand had split open with a cut. It was extremely ghastly. Yiqing Luo could clearly see that the line of blood was still spreading towards his arm, although the speed was very slow. But Yiqing Luo could determine that this line of blood would spread to his shoulder in less than a joss stick's time. What is this? Yiqing Luo glanced sideways as she looked at Miao Ji. Indeed. I guessed correctly. Miao Ji's eyes sunk when she saw that red line. There are goo worms in Dmo Xian's body, and it's an extremely insidious poison, right? It wasn't a big deal for a normal person to touch the worm web. But Dmo Xian had the love and centrifugal worm in his body. At the moment when he touched the worm web, the medicinal effect of the goo worm's nemesis flowed through the skin and into Dmo Xian's body. The love and centrifugal worm would be stimulated by this medicinal effect at the same time. Hearing Miao Ji's explanation, Yiqing Luo's heart tightened. Then is there any way to alleviate it? I'll light a stalk of tranquilizer to temporarily let the goo worms in Dmo Xian's body settle down first. Miao Ji took out an incense burner from the side and placed it by the bedside. Yiqing Luo took a look. That was a square-shaped incense block and the smell was very strange. She took a look at Miao Ji. Although she was sure that Miao Ji cared about Miao Yi a lot, and would not have any ill intentions towards her and Dmo Xian. But after all, regarding the art of goo worms, it was something she wasn't good at, so she couldn't fully trust it. Yiqing Luo asked Old Man Song in her consciousness. You lass, you're really reckless. Knowing that Dmo Xian's body was implanted with love and centrifugal worm, you still let him come to this place full of goo worms. After Old Man Song was awakened by Yiqing Luo, he sensed the surrounding atmosphere and couldn't help but mumbled a few words. Old Man Song's consciousness swept towards the direction of the goo worm incense. That is an ordinary incense. It can be used to suppress the goo worms in Dmo Xian's body. He watched as Miao Ji lit the incense and placed it beside the bed. Yiqing Luo was just about to ask about Dmo Xian's situation. Miao Ji's gaze was fixed on her. There's a soul searching for an Gongxiang. It's you. Whose soul do you carry with you? As soon as she said that, she quickly retracted her gaze and realized something. She smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that." She lowered her eyes, and her face was as gentle as water. "You and I have just met, and the person who has been poisoned is a venerable sovereign. It's reasonable for you to be wary of me." Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she silently tried to guess the meaning behind Miao Zhi's words. Why could Miao Zhi sense old man Tsang's existence? Goo worms don't necessarily have to be used to control people. There are also goo worms that specialize in controlling souls. There is a soul goo here that can sense my presence. Old man Tsang was also shocked. The saintess of the Miao Gu clan is indeed in existence that can ascend to the upper realm. She even knows how to nurture things like soul goo. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as her eyes fixed on Miao Zhi. Chapter 28-21. I know, you want to talk to me about Yi. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze from Miao Zhi and looked back at the man lying on the bed as her voice was very soft. Your relationship with Yi, if I didn't guess wrongly, even if you're not mother and daughter, but you were once as close as mother and daughter. As Yiqing Luo said that, she stretched out her hand again and held Dmo Xian's scorching hot palm. After the incense was ignited, Dmo Xian's tightly knitted brows eased slightly. Only, the man's temperature was unable to cool down for a long time. She hoped that Dmo Xian could feel that she was by his side. Using her willpower to withstand the stimulation of the love and centrifugal worm. Am I very obvious? Miao Zhi gave a bitter smile behind her. Yi's attitude towards me is so cold. How can you still tell our relationship? Yiqing Luo didn't look at her as her voice was slightly gloomy. The onlooker sees the game more clearly. I can tell that Yi isn't cold towards you, but she can't accept you appearing as the sacred lady. Miao Zhi was stunned as though her thoughts were exposed as she lowered her eyelids. After some time, she sighed softly as a sliver of melancholy and uneasiness flashed in her eyes. Miss Yi, putting aside the sacred lady's identity, can I ask you for a favor as a senior? Yiqing Luo looked at her sideways. Miao Zhi's lips moved. Yi trusts you very much, I hope. You can help me to restore the relationship between me and Yi. I don't want to leave Nirvana realm with any regrets. Seeing Miao Yi return to the Miao tribe and shed away the immaturity and naivety from before, she had become able to take charge. Miao Zhi's heart was gratified and excited, but also melancholy and helpless. Melancholy, she had never participated in Miao Yi's changes. But she was unable to participate in Miao Yi's changes. Restore the relationship. Yiqing Luo found it funny as she raised her brows. Yi obviously doesn't hold any hope towards you. Since you're about to leave Nirvana realm, why do you need to give her unnecessary hope before you leave and increase her sadness? I know. I let her down in the past, but I'm Yi's only family in this world. I don't want her to feel that she has no one to worry about in this world other than the two of you. Miao Zhi's eyes were complicated. Moreover, Yi has become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. 50 years later, she will be able to ascend to the upper realm. I will be waiting for her there. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and didn't reply immediately. Miao Zhi's feelings for Miao Yi did not seem fake. Moreover, Miao Zhi was right. Except for the dying Miao Yixiong. Miao Zhi was Miao Yi's only family. Miao Yi indeed had a deep grudge against Miao Zhi. However, if he really didn't care about Miao Zhi, why would he pay attention to her attitude? Pay attention to Miao Zhi's emotions. Furthermore, because of Miao Zhi, he even attempted to give up on the saintess selection. If he really didn't care. That way, his emotions wouldn't be affected. If you can help me and calm Yi down so that we can meet and talk about the venomous insect poison in Di Zun's body, I can help. Miao Ji saw that Yi Qing Luo wasn't speaking for a long time and her hands were tightly clasped together, as her voice sounded a little bitter. Apparently, she didn't want to use this kind of transaction method to beg Yi Qing Luo for help. But, she had no other choice. Chapter 28-22. Are you sure you can cure Xian? Yi Qing Luo followed Miao Ji's words and continued. Not only to give Miao Ji a way out. Most importantly, Dmo Xian's poison could be cured as soon as possible. When Miao Yi became the Sacred Maiden, she would go to the Sacred Maiden Pavilion to find the cure. It would take too long. Moreover, Long Yunzhan was still waiting for her to bring Miao Yi back to suppress the poison in his body. If Miao Ji could cure Dmo Xian in advance, time would be much more relaxed. But facing Yi Qing Luo's hopeful gaze, Miao Ji's face revealed an obvious guilty expression. I'm sorry, cure. I can't do it. Yi Qing Luo's heart, which had been lifted up, felt as though it was being strangled by something fiercely as her throat tightened. Can't do it. Miao Ji's Sacred Maiden said she couldn't cure Xian. Meaning, the poison in Xian's body, even the Sacred Maiden couldn't cure it. No, don't misunderstand. Seeing Yi Qing Luo's exquisite face turning pale in an instant as her eyes widened in shock and her lifeless look, Miao Ji immediately opened her mouth to explain. What I mean is not that the Overlord's poison can't be cured, but I can't personally cure the Overlord's poison. This time round, Miao Ji was too embarrassed to interrupt her as she spoke swiftly. I don't know what the poison in the Overlord's body is, nor do I know what method was used to implant it into the Overlord's body. From the Overlord's intense projection of the worm web, to the point that even a powerful Overlord is unable to control the poison, I can conclude that the poison in the Overlord's body is not simple. As she said that, her gaze fell onto Dmo Xian. That revealed half of his arm. The red bloodlines which kept spreading had stopped at his wrist and didn't spread any further. She sighed softly. Such a complicated poison, the method to cure it is also very complicated. I don't have much time left in Nirvana realm, so I really have no way to cure the Overlord. Then, Yi Qing Luo's throat moved, and after she spat out a word, she felt her throat tightening. After Yi becomes the Sacred Maiden, I will tell her the method. Miao Ji looked at the young lady whose face was gradually regaining its color. I knew Yi's innate talent since she was born, so if I pass it to her, she will definitely do better than me. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes. She looked at the man on the bed quietly. And Zhongxiang had already played its role. The painful expression on the man's face eased up a lot. His tightly furrowed and twisted brows slowly smoothed out. Her fingertips slowly probed towards Dmo Xian's wrist. When it touched that line of blood, the protruding sensation made her slightly startled. This bloodline seemed to have grown out from Dmo Xian's body. It felt very strange to the touch. Goosebumps rose all over her body. However, it was fortunate that he was able to. This line of blood did not seem to have any intention of continuing to spread. Otherwise, she really didn't know what would happen when the bloodline spread to her shoulders, or even her head. Looks like she wanted to persuade Miao Yi to give Miao Ji a chance to resolve the misunderstanding. It was not only because of Miao Yi, but also because she cared about Miao Ji. If he wanted to cure Dmo Xian earlier, Miao Ji had to get along with Miao Yi peacefully. Miao Yi also had to learn the method of curing the goo from Miao Ji seriously. Chapter 28-23. Miao Ji's expression changed slightly. She clenched her fists even tighter. Her fingertips turned white, with blue veins popping out. Between his eyes, there was a thin layer of mist. Yi Qing Luo didn't rush her, quietly letting her immerse herself in her own thoughts and memories of the past. After a long time, Miao Ji closed her eyes and slowly opened her mouth. Mixed with a sigh, it was filled with extreme bitterness. Miao Zhi and Miao Yi's relationship was as Yi Qing Luo expected. Not a mother and daughter relationship. But they were indeed like mother and daughter. Miao Zhi was Miao Yi's biological mother, Miao Yuan's biological sister, which was also Miao Yi's aunt. But to put it more accurately, Miao Zhi should be considered as Miao Yi's master. Most of Miao Yi's witchcraft was taught by Miao Zhi. Miao Yi's biological mother wasn't a Miao clansman, but was saved by Miao Yixiong when he was outside, rushing about for the development of the Miao tribe. Miao Yuan and Miao Zhi were brought into the Miao tribe by Miao Yixiong. Their names were also given by Miao Yixiong. Their days in the Miao tribe were not easy for the two sisters. Because the Miao clansmen were too united. They were not willing to acknowledge them who came from other tribes. Because of this, when Miao Yuan and Miao Yixiong fell in love and became pregnant, none of the Miao clansmen acknowledged Miao Yuan's identity as the clan leader's wife. Of course, Miao Yixiong was only interested in Miao Yuan's beauty, to have a taste and play. The woman whom Miao Yixiong wanted to marry was naturally a woman who could help him stabilize his position as the clan leader. To him, Miao Yuan was just a plaything. These words, Miao Zhi persuaded Miao Yuan. But Miao Yuan deeply loved this hero who saved her, and didn't believe her sister's words. With the child in her belly, she looked forward to her hero marrying her. But what Miao Yuan waited for was not Miao Yixiong's sedan chair. But Miao Yixiong's chosen wife, with the same big belly, came to the door with her head held high. She claimed that she was under Miao Yixiong's order to abort the bastard in Miao Yuan's belly. The reason for the abort. It was to let the child in her belly become the legitimate eldest miss of the Miao tribe. How could Miao Yuan be willing to submit? The two sisters accidentally entered the land of the ancient Gu king when they were trying to escape. Coincidentally, the ancient Gu king was molting and accepting a new life. He heard that Miao Yuan and Miao Zhi had entered the land of the ancient Gu king. Miao Yixiong and the elders hurried over. Miao Yuan was so nervous that his stomach bumped into King of Venomous Worm's half-molted shell. The sharp shell cut through the skin on Miao Yuan's stomach. A drop of blood entered Gu King's body through the half-molted shell. Great Elder Miao saw this scene unfold before his eyes. The Gu King, who had sucked in the blood from Miao Yuan's stomach, was not agitated at all. Moreover, Miao Yuan was not corroded by the poison of the Gu King. Great Elder Miao immediately decided that the child in Miao Yuan's womb was recognized by the ancient Gu King and was the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Madame Miao's face instantly turned pale. Madame Miao was also very powerful in the Miao tribe. However, no one dared to act rashly against a child recognized by the ancient Gu King. In the end, he could only hide Miao Yi's identity after Miao Yuan gave birth to her. Until Madame Miao's child, Miao Rongrong, was born. Miao Yi gradually appeared in the eyes of the Miao tribe. In fact, Miao Yi was born 2 months earlier than Miao Rongrong. However, for Miao Rongrong's legitimate misidentity. Chapter 28-24. However, Miao Yi gave up her identity. She did not get the reward she deserved. No one in the Miao tribe was willing to accept a second miss who was half a foreigner. No one acknowledged Miao Yi's identity. No one gave Miao Yi the respect she deserved as a second Mississippi. In addition, Madame Miao hated the Miao sisters and Miao Yi. Because Miao Yi was the child protected by the Gu King, Madame Miao did not dare to go too far. But in the dark, he had set up many obstacles for the sisters and their children. He had even thought of a vicious plan to kill Miao Yuan and her sister. She could not touch Miao Yi. She could at least touch the sisters, right? As long as the two sisters were killed. A child that had just been born would not live for long. With this thought in mind, Madame Miao's attacks became more and more vicious. Most importantly, after Miao Yixiong knew what Madame Miao had done, he did not stop her at all. This also showed his attitude to the Miao tribesmen even more clearly. Not only Madame Miao's henchmen would come looking for trouble. Even the other Miao tribesmen who could not stand the sight of outsiders would humiliate them several times. Fortunately, Miao Xi was smart and knew to attract the elders again and again, blocking several attempts to kill her. After repeated setbacks, Miao Yi almost died in Madame Miao's hands several times. Miao Yuan gradually grew up. Miao Yuan was really silly when it came to love. But as a mother, from a mother's point of view, love and whatnot were all fleeting clouds. Just like that, under the protection of the Miao sisters, Miao Yi lived to the age of 5. Miao Xi had a deep understanding of the Miao tribe's reality and their terrible faces in the past few years. They wanted to leave the Miao tribe. But those who entered the Miao tribe, without the permission of the tribe leader and the elders, could not even take a step out. If they did not leave the Miao tribe, they had to establish a foothold in the Miao tribe. They could not make the Miao tribe recognize their bloodline. Then they could only start with the Gu tribe. Back then, they were forced by Madame Miao to hide in the ancient Gu king's land. Miao Xi kept an eye out. When Miao Yuan's belly was cut by the Gu king's shell, she stepped forward to support him, leaving behind a drop of her own blood. From then on, Miao Xi could clearly feel that she was very sensitive to the aura of Gu worms. Even after Madame Miao tried to poison them several times, she could also restrain those Gu worms and take them for her own use. At first, Miao Xi was not interested in the Miao tribe's Gu. After discovering these changes, she was only wary of Madame Miao's henchmen, and had no intention of learning from Miao Gu. However, Madame Miao was overbearing. And Miao Yi, who had escaped death several times. This made Miao Xi determined to use voodoo to raise their status. Thus, Miao Xi began to secretly learn Miao Gu's voodoo techniques. The Miao tribesmen did not take Miao Xi and the other two seriously at all. From time to time, Miao Xi would act as a cleaning maid, entering the Miao stockade village's Gu book pavilion to clean up. This also gave Miao Xi more opportunities to come into contact with Miao Gu's knowledge. In the next few months, her voodoo skills improved by leaps and bounds. Ever since Miao Yi was born, Miao Xi knew that her niece was a direct descendant of the Miao tribe that the king of venomous worms had recognized. Her talent for Miao Gu was definitely above hers. Chapter 28-25. This made Miao Xi more and more sure of her guess. So, Miao Xi taught Miao Yi all the knowledge she knew about the Gu. She also asked Miao Yi to hide her knowledge of the Gu as much as possible. The environment she grew up in made Miao Yi know how to observe people at a young age, and how not to let her mother and aunt worry about her. Naturally, she obediently listened to her aunt's words. Even Miao Yuan did not know that his daughter had begun to learn the Gu of the Miao Gu. Another year passed like this. Miao Xi's Gu was no worse than most of the Miao people. Miao Yi was indeed a talented direct descendant of the Miao people. But she learned knowledge from Miao Xi for a year. Now, her knowledge of the Gu had far surpassed Miao Rongrong, who was carefully cultivated by Miao Yixiong and Mrs. Miao. Miao Xi was very pleased about this. At this time, Miao Yi and Miao Xi's relationship was undoubtedly the best. They got along every day and discussed the Gu of the Miao Gu. It could be said that even Miao Yuan was a little jealous of their intimacy. All of this, when did it start to change? It was when Miao Yi was almost 7 years old. Miao Xi brought Miao Yi to the land of the ancient Gu king and learned the knowledge of the Gu as usual. But she met the saintess at that time, Miao Jingyi. Miao Jingyi encountered Miao Yi's Gu of the Miao talent. After hearing Miao Yi's identity, she decisively proposed that Miao Yi be her candidate for the next saintess. At this time, Miao Jingyi had reached the qualification to ascend to the upper realm. But she had to stay in the Miao tribe for 50 years. Now there were still a few years. But after seeing Miao Yi, Miao Jingyi had another plan. Miao Jingyi wanted to pass the position of the saintess to Miao Ji and take charge of the position for 7 years. In the saintess selection ceremony 7 years later, she would pass it to Miao Yi. This plan sounded like a way for Miao Ji and Miao Yi to change their situation. But Miao Jingyi's request was not only this. The reason why Miao Jingyi chose Miao Yi was that Miao Yi was a direct descendant protected by the Gu King. She had been the saintess of the Miao tribe for 40 years and could not get close to the Gu King. She wanted to see Miao Yi borrow the power of the Gu King. She wanted to see the connection between Miao Yi and the Gu King. Although, since Miao Yi was born, the elders had mentioned that Miao Yi was the direct descendant of King of Venomous Worms. But in fact, they didn't really touch the Gu King. They didn't dare to get close to him. Let Miao Shi see the connection between Miao Yi and King of Venomous Worms. What if all his guesses were wrong? Miao Yi had come into contact with the King of Venomous Worms and was corroded by its poison. What should she do then? Miao Shi did not dare to take this risk. Miao Yi was everything to her and Miao Yuan. She couldn't risk Miao Yi for the sake of her future status. However, Miao Shi was eager to ascend. Miao Shi did not reply. Thus, he took the initiative to look for Miao Yuan. Only then did Miao Yuan realize that his sister and daughter had actually secretly put in so much effort for this family, after hearing the conditions for Miao Yi to contact the Gu King. Miao Yuan refused without hesitation. Miao Shi didn't insist. She just said, which expert doesn't walk on the edge of danger? If a talented Miao Gu genius like Yi is buried because of you, are you sure she won't blame you when she grows up? He wouldn't blame them. Chapter 28-26. That was right. If Miao Yi grew up and found out that he had rejected her chance to become strong, would he blame her? She didn't know. Unable to answer this question, Miao Ji was also unable to make a decision. The 7-year-old Miao Yi, who had been sensitive since she was a child, sensed the atmosphere. Miao Shi's visit to Miao Yuan and Miao Ji had aroused Madame Miao's vigilance. Once again, he was ruthless. In order to protect Miao Yi, Miao Yuan was seriously injured. Only then did Miao Yi know that Miao Shi asked her to prove that she was related to Gu King. She looked at her mother, who was lying on the bed with a pale face but was always thinking about her. Miao Yi chose to agree with Miao Shi's proposal. She was still young. But after all, the environment she grew up in made her very clear. In the Miao tribe, if he wanted to stand firm, if he wanted to gain the recognition of the Miao tribe, if he wanted to protect his mother and aunt, if he wanted to avenge his mother, she had to stand at the highest position in the Miao tribe, the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. She wanted to become the saintess of the Miao tribe. Madame Miao must pay the price. She wanted to make that so-called father and sister regret treating the 3 of them with such an attitude. She wanted to protect her mother and aunt. While Miao Yuan was not paying attention, Miao Yi went to look for Miao Shi. Miao Shi had been waiting for Miao Yuan and Miao Ji's answer. However, Miao Yi came alone to reply. He valued Miao Yi more and more. Miao Yi did not disappoint Miao Shi. She contacted Gu King in front of Miao Shi. Moreover, it did not cause the King of Venomous Worms to counterattack. When Miao Ji arrived at the land of the Gu King, what he saw was Miao Yi putting her hand on the giant King of Venomous Worms. The hearts of the people of the Hmong village almost stopped beating. Miao Ji rushed over to stop him. However, Miao Shi stopped her. She heard Miao Shi muttering to herself, as expected, it's her, the destined holy maiden Miao Gu. Miao Ji did not understand what he meant. She only knew that when she came to her senses, Miao Shi had already held Miao Yi's hand and walked in front of her. Miao Shi's eyes were filled with smiles. This child is the next holy virgin. There are only 4 years left until the Holy Virgin selection. In these 4 years, I'll have to trouble you, to help her grow up to the point where she has the qualifications to become the holy daughter. In a daze, Miao Zhi brought Miao Yi back. Then, he was secretly summoned by Miao Shui. On the same day, Miao Shui gave her saintess position as well as the goo worms that she had nurtured for decades to Miao Zhi. He even told Miao Zhi, Miao Yi would become the master of Goo King. However, with Miao Yi's current mental strength, she could not control the Goo King for her own use. If he wanted Miao Yi to contract with the king of venomous worms before she became the Holy Virgin, the only way was for Miao Yi to lose all support and grow up alone. That was to say, Miao Zhi, who had become the Holy Maiden, could no longer take care of Miao Yi as the Holy Maiden. And Miao Yuan could no longer protect Miao Yi. Everything, let Miao Yi grow on her own. He could increase his mentality and form a contract with the ancient Goo King. Miao Zhi hesitated. Miao Yuan, who was seriously injured in bed, made the decision for her. Miao Yuan knew very well that he could not survive this serious injury. Miao Yi had such a chance now. As long as she became the holy maiden of the Miao tribe in the future, Miao Yi's future would be peaceful. Chapter 28-27. Miao Yuan knew that becoming the saintess was the greatest guarantee for Miao Yi's future. So, as she gritted her teeth, with her seriously injured body, and Miao Zhi, left the small courtyard where she lived with Miao Yi. Moved to the place where the saintess lived. In the first few days, Miao Yi thought her mother was taken away by her aunt for treatment. But 7 days passed. She still did not hear any news about her mother and aunt. Miao Yi also felt something was wrong. She was only 7 years old, and she was famous for being a waste. The Miao people did not treat Miao Yi as the second miss of Miao tribe, nor were they wary of her. Miao Yi asked around. From the gossip of the Miao people, she got some information. For example, because of Madame Miao's ruthless attack this time, Miao Yuan was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Miao Yuan was afraid, so he handed his dying sister to Madame Miao. And on the day he handed her over, Miao Yuan died. The cause of death was unknown. But the Miao people knew. Madame Miao hated Miao Yuan so much, how could Miao Yuan survive in her hands? As for Miao Zhi, because she handed over her sister. It seemed that she was rewarded by Madame Miao and went to live a good life. Miao Yi could not be sure whether these gossips were true or false. And the only thing she could be sure of was, Miao Rongrong had come to her with her fangs and claws bared. Her mother was indeed dead. Indeed, Miao Zhi handed her to Madame Miao personally. At that moment, Miao Yi's heart was completely swallowed by darkness. She became a child without a father or mother. She became the lowest person in Miao tribe. Anyone could trample on her pride at will. She promised her mother, before she could confirm that she was the saintess, don't show your talent and strength in Goo. She always remembered this advice. And paid a real price. No matter how hard the days were. In the eyes of outsiders, she was still a waste to the point that everyone could bully. But, in private, Miao Yi never relaxed her absorption of Miao tribe's Goo. She put all her effort into cultivation. She wanted to become the saintess of Miao tribe. Open and above board, kill Madame Miao, Miao Yi Xiong, Miao Rongrong, then find Miao Zhi and make her kneel in front of her mother's grave to apologize. To avenge his mother. The memories ended. After Miao Zhi told him everything, her face was visibly relieved. It was probably because these words had been suppressed in his heart for far too long. She couldn't bear the pressure anymore. Yi didn't know that you were just acting as the sacred maiden for her for 4 years. After Yi Qing Luo heard all the memories, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart, how fate made fools of people. Yes. Miao Zhi shook her head. Yi Qing Luo sighed. It was no wonder that Miao Yi would reveal such an expression when she saw Miao Zhi. His hatred towards Miao Zhi had risen so quickly in that instant. Miao Zhi could be considered as her mother's murderer. How much he loved and respected Miao Zhi. After seeing Miao Zhi become the holy virgin of the Miao tribe, her hatred for Miao Zhi deepened. In Miao Yi's heart, she must have thought, Miao Zhining became the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. It was because he had handed over Miao Yuan that he had this opportunity. It was even more likely that he would feel. The position of saintess that Miao Shui had promised was given to her. But in the end, Miao Zhi became the saintess. Then Miao Zhi must have used some method to snatch the position which originally belonged to her. This misunderstanding. How long more do you plan to squat there and eavesdrop? Yi Qing Luo's words had just landed. Miao Zhi's entire body stiffened, as though she understood the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. Her eyes suddenly widened as she looked towards the direction where Yi Qing Luo's gaze had landed. The wind blew, bringing with it the fragrance of the surrounding grass and leaves that were the food of the goo worms. There was also the rustling sound of countless goo worms squirming. Even after staring for a long time, the figure that Zhang Xian had imagined did not appear before him. Miao Zhi's initial nervousness gradually turned into disappointment. Chapter 28-29. Not coming out means that after you know the truth, you're unable to face your aunt. Yi Qing Luo didn't mind Miao Zhi's words as she continued looking at that direction, or is it because, even after knowing the truth, you're still unable to forgive her? Miao Zhi's expression froze on her face when she heard what she said. Her face started to turn pale. Her clenched fists clenched even tighter. Yi Qing Luo was so certain. She was certain that Miao Yi was not far away from this guest room. Which meant to say that all the memories she mentioned earlier. Miao Yi heard all of it. Miao Yi knew the cause and effect of everything. Was it as what Yi Qing Luo said, unable to face her? Or was it because she was unable to forgive? In this uneasy atmosphere, the atmosphere was very tense. A young lady dressed in the Miao tribe's sacred maiden candidate's attire slowly walked into their sight. The young lady's face was filled with tears. A pair of beautiful eyes stared intently at Miao Zhi, as though she was confirming something. When Miao Zhi's gaze fell onto the young lady's face, she seemed to have turned into a fossil as she froze on the spot. Didn't you want a chance for the both of you to resolve the misunderstanding peacefully? Why are you still in a daze here for? Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at Miao Zhi as she spoke calmly. These two had been toyed with by fate and there were too many misunderstandings between them. The matters between them. Outsiders couldn't interfere. Only if the both of them were frank and open, saying out what was in their hearts, could it be resolved. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to interfere in their grudges. Miao Zhi's throat moved as her pale lips trembled slightly. But after some time, she couldn't spit out a single word. If one took a closer look, one would be able to tell. At this moment, Miao Zhi's body was trembling slightly. One of them stiffened, not daring to open his mouth to break the silence. The other's face was filled with tears as he watched quietly. This situation lasted for almost half an incense stick of time. Yi Qing Luo might as well take action directly as she threw the both of them out. Go go go, don't disturb Xian's rest. Closing the room door, Yi Qing Luo returned to the bed and sat down. One hand, holding the man's wide palm. As though this was the only way to let him feel that she was by his side. But her butt hadn't even warmed up in time. Suddenly, he felt something tighten around his waist. Then, he felt the world spin around him. Her body had already fallen onto the bed. The man's hot and hard body firmly fixed her delicate body between his arms. The familiar scent of sandalwood filled his nose. The man's long, ink-like hair cascaded down and landed on her face, stirring her skin. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted, through her hair. Her eyes reflected that peerless, noble, and indifferent face. It was Dmo Xian. He woke up. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly as she revealed a joyful look. Ah Xian, your body. What's wrong with this sovereign? Dmo Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes as his thin lips curved upwards, so impatient to fulfill your promise to this lord. Yiqing Luo's pupils shook. In his body, was it still the centrifugal goo that controlled it? Had he become the black-bellied, powerful overlord who had forgotten about her again? Why are you in a daze? Dmo Xian bent down and his thin lips came close to hers as he gave a low hoarse laugh. Racking your brains to get this sovereign into this small room, alone man and woman. Chapter 28:30. That pair of dazzling peach blossom eyes were pitch black and heavy. Shimmering flowing lights, revealing a demonic profoundness. Yiqing Luo had always been unable to resist Dmo Xian's handsome man trap. Her little heart was already thumping wildly. Especially, the man had intentionally suppressed his magnetic voice, using the originally normal words, instead of using that tone to make one blush. Yiqing Luo's cheeks were dyed red. The redder it was, the more unforgiving her mouth. If you're not willing to follow me into the small room, how can I bring you in? Dmo Xian raised his brows, looking at the young lady's blushing face, but pretending to be calm, not willing to suffer any loss. She only felt that in her heart, a certain place was gradually softening. His eyes grew deeper as he gazed deeply into her charming eyes, since the timing and location are favorable. This lord will not stand on ceremony and accept the benefits that you and this lord have exchanged. Saying that, he had already lowered his head, as his lips were right next to her ear. The rich scorching aura enveloped her entirely. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled slightly, as she was slightly dazed by the man's teasing. But she was still conscious. When his lips were about to move downwards, Yiqing Luo raised her hand, as she hugged his head, stopping him from continuing. The man's action paused, as his thin lips intentionally brushed past her ear, as he immediately raised his head. That cold and noble face was closer to her eyes, by a few inches. His lips curled into a devilish smile. His voice was low and hoarse, deliberately seductive. Why? You and I are not trading. Yiqing Luo pressed his head, as her voice also became extremely soft due to the man's deliberate teasing. His eyes flickered slightly, as he quietly looked at her. Yiqing Luo slowly propped herself up, as the hand that was hugging his head changed to grab his collar. You're my man, no matter how you feel about me now. You belong to me. Her tone was extremely overbearing. Her eyes were curved, like a crafty fox. Dmo Xian, remember this, I can let you do whatever you want to me, including everything. Not because of the so-called trade between us, but because you're mine. She didn't want Dmo Xian to hug her at the same time. She only thought that the intimate relationship between them was because of a deal. No matter how bad she, Yiqing Luo, was. If the other party was not Dmo Xian, it was also impossible for him to use himself as a so-called trading item. Dmo Xian's pupils shrank imperceptibly. A dark light flashed in his eyes. In the next instant, he pinched the girl's chin and pressed his lips against hers. This kiss wasn't gentle, but it wasn't overbearing either. Instead, it was a kind of thin, lingering kiss. The kiss made Yiqing Luo's brain turn slightly white as her eyes started to slacken. Chapter 28:31. However, Miao Yi's emotions were unstable. Before Miao Ji could stop her, she had already rushed into the courtyard that was blocked by the vines. Miao Yi's feet had already sensed danger when she had just stepped into the vines. She had an innate sensitivity towards goo worms. She quickly retracted her feet and took out a powder that could restrain goo worms from the brocade bag at her waist to counterattack. Miao Yi's reaction was indeed very fast. However, she was impulsive, and half of her feet had already stepped into the vines. Even if she counterattacked. On the vines, there were several black goo worms that were about the thickness of a finger, and they directly wrapped around Miao Yi's feet. Miao Yi's face was slightly pale, and she quickly sprinkled the powder on her feet. Suddenly, a hand stretched out and stopped her hand that was sprinkling the powder. Then, she was brought into a warm embrace. You can't use the anti-goo powder. These are blood-sucking goo worms that move in groups. If you use the anti-goo powder to hurt one of them, thousands of blood-sucking goo worms will take revenge for you. The woman's gentle voice sounded beside her ears. Miao Yi's delicate body suddenly froze. She stood still in a daze. In her mind, a scene from a long time ago actually appeared. At that time, Miao Ji also held the little girl in her arms like this. Miao Ji used her unique gentle tone, patiently and seriously explaining the knowledge of goo worms that she did not understand. This scene, it had been a long time since she had felt it. Ugh! A muffled groan startled Miao Yi back to her senses. Miao Ji used all her strength to protect her in her arms. She directly used her hands to block the blood-sucking goo worms that climbed up for her. A few soft black goo worms instantly attached themselves to Miao Ji's fair arms. Almost in an instant, Miao Ji's hands quickly dried up. Aunt! Miao Yi's eyes widened, and she cried out in panic, trying to help her get rid of those blood-sucking goo worms. Miao Ji's hands firmly held her in place. Miao Yi curled up in her arms, unable to move at all. I'm fine. Miao Ji's voice was very soft, and there was a hint of sobbing. Don't be afraid, it's good that you're fine. As she spoke, the corners of her mouth lifted into a smile. She didn't seem to feel that she had been possessed by the blood-sucking goo. Her withered arm used the hand that was holding Miao Yi and pulled Miao Yi behind her. Stand there and don't move, Miao Ji said softly. When she was sure that Miao Yi was standing in a place that she thought was safe. Only then did Miao Ji start to deal with the blood-sucking goo. A moment later, the blood-sucking goo were sealed back into the poison goo institute. Miao Ji's face was extremely pale. She let out a sigh of relief. The feeling of losing too much blood rushed to his head. The dizziness in front of her caused her body to sway. Be careful. A pair of soft little hands caught her in time. Miao Ji was exhausted, but she forced herself to open her eyes. He glanced sideways and looked at the young girl beside him, whose eyes were filled with worry. His eyes were filled with tenderness. Can you call me one more time? Miao Ji's voice was clearly choked with emotion. His eyes, which were filled with fatigue and lost their luster from time to time, were red-rimmed. Miao Yi felt her heart tighten. Her heart seemed to be fiercely strangled by something. Her nose also felt sour. Miao Yi moved her lips. But she couldn't say anything. After waiting quietly for a while, Miao Ji didn't hear Miao Yi call out the name that she had waited for so many years. Chapter 28:32. The corners of her lips curled into a reluctant arc as she spoke in a hoarse voice, No matter. It's all right if you don't want to. Aunt. Suddenly, Miao Yi's voice interrupted Miao Ji's words. Miao Ji was stunned as tears rolled down from her eyes without any warning. She choked with sobs as her teary eyes looked at Miao Yi without blinking. You're forgiving me. Why did you do that? Miao Yi pursed her lips tightly as her eyes stared at Miao Ji's obviously withered hand, do you think that I will forgive you just like this? Miao Zhi's voice choked as her throat tightened. Miao Yi raised her hand and supported her as they walked towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's room, which was the furthest away from the guest room. As they walked, the girl's icy cold voice was heard, I call you aunt because you are indeed my aunt. Even if I hate you, this is a fact that cannot be changed. Miao Zhi's eyes turned redder as she opened her mouth to explain, but she didn't know how to explain. The two of them remained silent as they entered the room. Miao Yi helped Miao Zhi to the seat as she held up her hand and checked it carefully, rearing venomous worms in your own courtyard and you didn't prepare any antidote. My hand is fine. Miao Zhi shook her head as she lowered her eyes to look at her withered hand which was placed on the table. It'll be fine in a few days. Miao Yi pursed her lips as she didn't say another word. It was another silent atmosphere as it lingered between the two of them. Miao Zhi wanted to open her mouth to break the silence several times. But facing Miao Yi's expressionless face, all her courage was extinguished at this moment. Obviously, she wanted to sit together with Miao Yi and clarify all the misunderstandings in the past. Now this opportunity was right in front of her eyes. But she couldn't say a single word. This silence made Miao Zhi's heart feel even more uncomfortable. Finally, Miao Zhi couldn't take it anymore. Did you hear what I said to Miss Yi? Miao Yi replied calmly. The sacred maiden selection ceremony had ended and she wanted to be alone for a while. But when she saw Yiqing Luo's Chi-Chi, that furry little ball, it was obviously here to comfort her. She thought about it and decided to look for Yiqing Luo, to tell her about her relationship with Miao Zhi. But he had not expected Miao Zhi to take the initiative to look for Yiqing Luo. She brought Chi-Chi and followed behind Yiqing Luo and the others, all the way to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. He also heard all of Miao Zhi's memories clearly. Then, Miao Zhi's voice was hoarse. She paused and asked carefully, so, what do you think? Miao Yi was silent for a moment. After a while, he raised his head. Miao Yi's gaze was calm as she stared at Miao Zhi. There was no expression on her face. And, although you didn't kill Mother with your own hands, it doesn't change the fact that you were an accomplice in her death. Miao Zhi's throat tightened again, and she couldn't say anything else. That was right, no matter how righteous her reason for handing Miao Yuan over was, it couldn't change the fact that she had personally sent her sister to hell. I don't blame you, Miao Yi continued, but I can't forgive you, and I can't forgive myself. As she said that, her eyelids drooped. If it wasn't for me, Mother wouldn't have died. Even though she was only 7 years old. But all the memories had long been engraved in her mind. Chapter 28:33. Her mother was seriously injured because she was protecting her. In order to protect her, her mother begged her aunt to use her own life to exchange for her safety for the next few years. Although, her aunt was her helper. But the real culprit was her. She was unable to forgive her aunt. And even more unable to forgive herself. You can't think in this way. Miao Zhi stuttered as she tried to persuade her, Sister's death is not your fault, it's all my. I sent Sister to Madame Miao's hands, you're right not to forgive me. Feeling Miao Zhi's anxiety and worry, Miao Yi slowly shook her head. She understood Miao Zhi's meaning. Miao Zhi didn't wish for her to go against herself because of this matter. She would rather she blame her, rather than let her blame herself. Miao Yi closed her eyes, hiding the sadness in her eyes as she gave a low laugh. Don't worry, Mother used her life to exchange for a future, I will not let Mother die in vain. As she said that, she slowly raised her eyes which had regained its calm. I will complete Mother's dying wish, to take revenge for Mother, to become the Miao tribe's saintess. Miao Zhi's lips squirmed a few times. Miao Yi had already interrupted her words. Earlier in the house, I heard it too. Is it true that you have a way to detoxify the overlord's poison? Miao Ji swallowed the words that were in her mouth. Qing Luo is my benefactor and the overlord is the person whom Qing Luo cares about the most. If you have a way, before you ascend, can you tell me about it? Miao Yi continued. Miao Ji's lips trembled again and after some time, she spat out a word, all right. Miao Yi looked at her injured hand. After the blood-sucking worm's poison is detoxified, then detoxify the overlord. Seeing that Miao Yi had placed all her thoughts on helping Dmo Xian detoxify the worm. In order to stay in Nirvana realm for the last few days, to get along well with Miao Yi. Miao Ji also shifted all her thoughts to the goo poison. What kind of worm was the overlord in? What kind of person could plant a worm on the overlord? Till now, she still didn't know what worm was in the overlord. Centrifugal worm and love worm. Miao Yi said word by word, the target is Qing Luo. Miao Ji's expression froze. I thought His Majesty was poisoned by the heart separation spell, but there was also the love spell. How can anyone from the Miao tribe use these two forbidden goo techniques? Miao Rongrong and Miao Yi Xiong worked together. Miao Yi didn't explain the situation in detail. These two types of venomous worms are originally mutually restraining and now both of them are in the overlord's body, moreover. The target is Qing Luo. Love venomous worm makes the overlord obedient to Qing Luo, whereas venomous worm makes the overlord forget everything about Qing Luo. She paused for a moment. If this goes on for a long time, even the overlord's body will not be able to take it, Miao Ji nodded solemnly. In fact, when Miao Ji detected the centrifugal worm in Dmo Xian's body, she was already astonished. An emperor who was poisoned by the centrifugal goo. To think that he could still be in such sweet love with Yi Qing Luo. It showed how deep the overlord's feelings for Yi Qing Luo were. Two kinds of venomous worms together, and the target is the same person. This kind of worm is even more troublesome to detoxify. Miao Ji frowned. Let them rest in the Miao tribe for a few days. These few days, I'll go to the Saint Maiden Pavilion to research on a safer method. Miao Yi remained silent for a moment. Tomorrow after the Sacred Maiden ceremony, I'll accompany you. After tomorrow, she would be the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. She also had the right to enter the Saint Maiden Pavilion. Chapter 28:34. In the other room, the entire room was filled with the scent of spring. The shadow of the bed fluttered as it shimmered. The silver robe and red shirt were intertwined. The young lady's cheeks were flushed red and her half-opened eyes were bewitching. The man on top of her was gently teasing the flame. Yi Qing Luo's mind was in a mess. But her consciousness was still awake. She tried to speak several times as her hands pushed against the man's chest. But before she could say a word, everything was sealed by a scorching aura that covered the sky and covered the earth. No, I can't. Between her murmurs, Yi Qing Luo panted heavily as she spat out two fragmented words. The man who was still kissing lifted his head. That handsome, godlike face was quietly reflected in her eyes. The man's peach blossom eyes were as calm as water without any ripples. He looked as though he wasn't tainted with the slightest bit of confusion. But, if one looked closely, she could tell. In the depths of the man's tranquil eyes, there was a flickering flame. The corners of his lips were filled with a hint of mischievous air. Drops of sweat rolled down from his taut muscles. This was obviously the performance of the cloud power of emotions. No way. Dmo Xian opened his mouth with a magnetic and seductive tone. Looks like I haven't worked hard enough. Teasing to such an extent. The young lady was still saying no way. Dmo Xian could tell. This was a rejection, not a woman's irony in bed. But a real sense of no way. No way. This was the first. woman who rejected him. No, no. Yiqing Luo tried her best to stay awake as she trembled weakly. She panted heavily, not allowing herself to be bewitched by his beauty. This is the sacred maiden's courtyard, they will be back any time. No, no way. This is not an excuse. Dmo Xian supported himself with one hand as the other hand floated onto the young lady's blushing face. His fingertips slowly brushed past her half-open misty eyes. His thin lips curled into a demonic cold arc. Your moans earlier were very enchanting, they are all tactful people. Such a simple sentence made Yiqing Luo's face burn even more. She bit her lips in embarrassment, avoiding Dmo Xian's deliberate teasing. Although the beauty was right in front of her, she also wanted to continue to the last step. But she did not forget. Dmo Xian's current condition could not continue. In Dmo Xian's body, there was still the existence of the centrifugal force goo. If they were just a little more intimate, the centrifugal goo would make Dmo Xian leave her. If he did such a thing, the centrifugal force goo would probably clamor even more fiercely. The last person to suffer was Dmo Xian. Now the room was lit with the tranquilizer incense, which stabilized the goo worms in Dmo Xian's body. But Yiqing Luo wasn't sure if Gongxiang would be able to suppress the corrosion of the centrifugal force goo if this carried on. She could not risk Dmo Xian's health. Xian. Yiqing Luo was thinking about what excuse to use to stop the man who had already gone crazy. However, just as he called out the name, the warmth and scorching heat covering his body abruptly withdrew. The man had already gotten off the bed and was standing by the side. Yiqing Luo was stunned. She wanted to get up but her whole body was limp without any strength. She could only turn her head to look at Dmo Xian. The man's slender fingers lightly touched her body. His slightly messy robe instantly tidied up. His face regained its usual indifference, and when his eyes looked towards Yiqing Luo, there wasn't a single bit of emotion. Extremely cold. Chapter 28:35. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. An ice-cold chill spread through his limbs and spread throughout his body. Her face turned pale. You. What do you mean? Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he squinted his long peach blossom eyes. His handsome face was icy cold. This lord has no interest in sleeping with you. Yiqing Luo's delicate body on the bed trembled slightly. Her 5 fingers clenched the quilt under her tightly. Her eyelashes trembled as she stared fixedly at Dmo Xian's eyes, with some obscure flickering. The man stood by the bed. Tall and slender, dressed neatly. She looked very noble and graceful. She, on the other hand, was lying on the bed with her clothes half taken off. The sharp contrast made Yiqing Luo's face turn paler. Her pink lips tightened, and when she spoke again, her voice sounded bitter. Dmo Xian, you know very well that it's not that I'm unwilling. Dmo Xian sneered without saying a word. The curvature of his lips was like a smile yet not a smile, which was extremely terrifying. That neither yin nor yang look made Yiqing Luo's anger gushed out for no reason. She clearly knew that Dmo Xian was like this because of the centrifugal worm. But, right now, she was obviously concerned about Dmo Xian's health. It was for Dmo Xian's sake that she rejected such intimacy time and time again. On the contrary, he even took advantage of her and gave her a cold shoulder. She endured Dmo Xian forgetting her. Endured Dmo Xian's indifference. Endured Dmo Xian flirting with her without any feelings. She was full of grievances. Who would understand? Perhaps she was really a little princess who was spoiled rotten by Dmo Xian. Assassin, after all, couldn't endure the flood of grievances. Her weak body, which was teased by the man, had also recovered its strength. She abruptly sat up on the bed with a sliver of grievance in her eyes. She tugged at her robes tightly as she said through gritted teeth, "Do you still want to say that if I don't want to sleep with you, you'll go find another woman who's willing to sleep with you." The young lady's angry words made Dmo Xian's brows suddenly crease tightly. Looking at the young lady's aggrieved face, her pair of charming eyes seemed to be rippling with layers of ripples, as if she was about to cry from grievance. Dmo Xian's heart inexplicably twitched. But very quickly, his expression returned to that of desperation. His face didn't reveal any other emotions. He smiled calmly and indifferently, "Yes." Just one word and Yiqing Luo was about to explode from anger. Was it that interesting to bully her? She lifted her leg and kicked the side of the bed. "Go, go, go. Go, I won't stop you. Go now." That leg directly kicked onto Dmo Xian's body. Dmo Xian took 2 steps back from the kick. Then, he looked down and stared at the small foot that was still kicking his waist. The owner of that foot was obviously still throwing a tantrum. After the first kick, she was completely unappeased and stuck close to Dmo Xian, wanting to kick again. Dmo Xian frowned as he gripped her leg tightly. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth and swung hard. "Let me go. Didn't you not want to sleep with me? Aren't you not interested in me anymore? Why are you still grabbing my leg?" Dmo Xian's eyes darkened as he violently shook off her leg. Following that, he turned around and left the room. Hearing the room door being opened, Yiqing Luo sat by the bed and stood up, wanting to stop him. But thinking of Dmo Xian's extremely cold attitude, her heart felt angry, vexed and wronged. She simply sat on the side of the bed and hugged her own legs. As though he was the only one who had a temper. She had always thought that she was Dmo Xian who was pampered like a princess. She was poisoned by the centrifugal worm and wanted to become the master? Chapter 28:36. However, after 6 hours had passed, Yiqing Tang's expression changed. Yiqing Luo's grievance was gradually replaced by worry. After Dmo Xian walked out of the room, Yiqing Luo curled up on the bed alone as she kept on grumbling about Dmo Xian. The more she complained, the more wronged she felt. The more aggrieved she felt, the more Yiqing Luo wanted to let Dmo Xian know that she wasn't really a woman who had to pester him and couldn't leave him. It was time to let Dmo Xian have a taste of being treated coldly. Thinking in this way, Yiqing Luo didn't chase after him or search for him. Miao Zhi and Miao Yi knocked on the door. Miao Zhi's voice was slightly awkward as she asked cautiously, "Miss Yi, is it convenient for us to come in?" "What's inconvenient about it?" Yiqing Luo climbed down from the bed. Miao Zhi and Miao Yi pushed the door and walked in, only to discover that Yiqing Luo was the only one left in the room and Yiqing Luo's expression was extremely gloomy. Miao Zhi looked around and asked, "Where is His Majesty?" "We quarreled and he ran away." Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and replied coldly. "Ran away?" Miao Zhi's expression changed. Why would they quarrel? In the Saintess courtyard, every garden was filled with goo worms. The overlord already has goo worms in his body. If he provokes other goo worms, it will be very dangerous. Miao Zhi's words made Yiqing Luo's eyes flash slightly as her body instinctively tensed up. "Wait for me here with Yi. I'll go look for a venerable sovereign." Miao Zhi made a prompt decision. Yiqing Luo hurriedly followed up, "Me too. In this courtyard, besides me, all of you are in danger." Miao Zhi stopped him. "I don't want to have to look for you everywhere before I find sovereign." Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted as her face was filled with a complicated expression. After a while, she lowered her eyes and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you. Please, help me find a Xian." Regarding the Miao Gu, she was in a state where she only had a smattering of knowledge. Not to mention whether she could protect herself in the face of those goo worms. He couldn't increase Miao Zhi's burden. She could only stay here and wait for news. He watched Miao Ji leave. Yi Qing Luo sat silently on the seat by the side. She hung her head and clenched her fists. Weren't you guys fine just now? Why did it suddenly? Miao Yi was afraid that Yi Qing Luo would be overly worried and let her imagination run wild, so after thinking for a moment, she opened her mouth to ask. She and Miao Ji were outside the door and heard Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian's intimate voices. Could it be an auditory hallucination? Yi Qing Luo's fingers tightened even more, her voice was very hoarse, in his eyes, I can't feel his feelings for me, my heart is very flustered. She raised her head, and her charming eyes were covered with a layer of clear and moist mist. She pursed her lips tightly, as if she was holding back something. I clearly know that he was poisoned by the heart separation goo, and he was poisoned because of me, but I still feel wronged. She clenched her fists tightly. Tell me. Am I very selfish? So selfish that I only want him to treat me well, but I don't want to see him acting like he doesn't care about anything. This is not selfishness. Miao Yi walked up to her, reached out her hand, and gently patted her on the shoulder. Because you love Di Zun, and because you love him, you want his response, don't you? Chapter 28:37. As Miao Yi said that, she sat down beside Yi Qing Luo. He held Yi Qing Luo's hand and clasped it in his palm. Qing Luo, my aunt said she has the confidence to find a way to cure the Overlord's dual venomous worm. However, because it was a poison that countered each other, his aunt wanted to find a safer method. After the inheritance of King of Venomous Worms ends tomorrow, I will enter the Saint Pavilion and study it with my aunt. She comforted him in a gentle voice, so, just wait for us for a few days. Before my aunt ascends to the upper realm, we will definitely be able to find a way to cure the venomous venom for the sovereign. Hearing this sentence, Yi Qing Luo's gaze had some changes. She raised her eyes and looked at Miao Yi. Can the poison in Xian's body really be completely removed? Yes. Miao Yi nodded with certainty. Although Aunt has only been the Miao tribe's holy maiden for 4 years, she still reads the books in the Holy Maiden Pavilion every day. Ordinary people need 50 years to become the Miao tribe's holy maiden before they can ascend to the upper realm, but I only used a short 4 years to ascend. You should believe in my strength. I believe you. Yi Qing Luo's eyes finally lit up. The next morning, Miao Ji walked into the room with a tired face. Yi Qing Luo hadn't slept the entire night, and when she saw that Miao Ji had returned, her gaze went past her, but she didn't see that familiar figure whom she had been pining for. Miao Ji sighed softly. I've found the Overlord. He's fine, but, she paused and didn't finish her sentence. Yi Qing Luo's expression turned indifferent. It's just that he doesn't want to see me, right? Miao Ji didn't answer, which was a tacit admission. Yi Qing Luo sat dejectedly by the side, her little fists clenched tightly as she angrily smashed it on the wooden table. Haven't you already been inflicted with the centrifugal venom and turned into that noble and elegant, high and mighty Overlord? Still acting like a child throwing a tantrum with me, isn't he childish? Miao Ji and Miao Yi looked at each other. It's fine if I don't want to see you. After he's cured, I'll see how he'll kneel on the washboard and beg for my forgiveness. Yi Qing Luo gritted her teeth as she spoke. Although his mouth was stubborn. In actual fact, Yi Qing Luo's heart was finally at ease. It was not important whether Dmo Xian was willing to come back to see her. The most important thing was, to ensure Dmo Xian's safety. It could be seen from Miao Ji's expression. Dmo Xian should be in a safe place now. I've told the Overlord about the dangers in the Saint Lady's courtyard. Miao Ji massaged her aching forehead with her slender fingers and continued, don't worry too much. The Overlord is actually the safest in the Holy Maiden's courtyard. At least, he wouldn't try his best to conceal the fact that Dmo Xian was afflicted with a venomous worm. He intends to stay in the sacred maiden's courtyard. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips as she understood the meaning behind Miao Zhi's words. Miao Zhi put down her hand and glanced sideways at the young girl sitting beside her. I can see that even though His Majesty has been poisoned by the centrifugal parasite and should have been swallowed by the parasite, he still cares about you and values you. Miao Yi handed a cup of hot tea to Miao Zhi and continued, I've read Gu books for many years, but I've never heard of anyone who was poisoned by the heart separation Gu would be like Lord Dizun, paying so much attention and care to the person he should be keeping his heart from. Chapter 28:38. I know he won't leave me behind. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered, no matter if I'm in his memories, he won't leave me behind. She was extremely certain of this. Towards the relationship between her and Dmo Xian, she had always been incomparably confident. I'm just worried. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes and met Miao Zhi's gaze. His feelings for me are too deep, so he will definitely have to contend against the centrifugal worm in his body. I'm afraid he will fail. According to the past, Dmo Xian was stimulated by the worm and fell into a coma. He would change the mode immediately after he woke up. But this time, Dmo Xian was stimulated by the worm web, but his consciousness was still eroded by the centrifugal worm. This made Yi Qing Luo had no choice but to think and worry. Dmo Xian loved her. Even his soul loved her. There was no doubt about this. But now, apparently, the time for the centrifugal worm to move was getting longer and longer. If this went on for a long time, Dmo Xian's consciousness might really be eroded by the centrifugal worm. By then, Dmo Xian would really leave her heart. But the love between the two of them. There was a possibility that it would cause Dmo Xian to be unable to take action, and then suffer the torture of the worm. What she didn't want the most was to see this happen. Go take part in the King of Venomous Worms' inheritance ceremony. After you become the Sacred Maiden, come look for me at the Sacred Maiden Pavilion. Miao Zhi put down the teacup in her hands and stood up. I'll go to the Sacred Maiden Pavilion to find the books on this. Aunt. Miao Yi frowned, obviously not agreeing to her arrangement. Yi Qing Luo also stood up. In order to help me find a Xian, you didn't sleep for the whole night, go rest first. It's all right, my body, I know. Miao Zhi's brows were filled with a gentle smile. Her eyes were gentle as she looked at Miao Yi's direction, as though she was overjoyed by Miao Yi's worry for her. The exhaustion in her eyes was also swept away in an instant. Yi Qing Luo and Miao Yi followed behind Miao Zhi as they walked out of the Sacred Maiden courtyard. Outside the courtyard, there were several elderly dressed in Miao elders' attire. Standing at the forefront were the first elder and the second elder. When they saw the three of them, they immediately welcomed them with smiles. Saintess, Lady Miao, Lady Yi, you're finally out. Miao Zhi frowned slightly. Why are you waiting outside the Saintess yard so early? Did something happen? Great Elder Miao looked past Miao Zhi and at Miao Yi, who was behind her. Then, he retracted his gaze and said, Your Highness, we're about to enter the land of the Gu King to carry out the inheritance ceremony of the Gu King. But the Gu King, Miao Zhi understood. These elders must be worried. Later, the Miao tribesmen and guests would be waiting outside the territory of the King of Venomous Worms. But, the King of Venomous Worms was no longer in the King of Venomous Worms' land. Yes, it was not only the Miao people who were disorganized. The other guests would probably laugh at the Miao people. They could not afford to take the risk. Miao Zhi also realized this problem. She glanced sideways at the girl behind her. Miao Yi smiled. Before the ceremony begins, the Goo King will return to the land of the Goo King. Great Elder Miao's expression froze. Chapter 28:39. Former clan leader. Former eldest young miss. Miao Yi muttered these two terms softly, as her face revealed a smile which didn't look like a smile. Fifth Elder Miao's face turned pale, as though he was vexed at himself for spilling the beans. But Fifth Elder Miao quickly adjusted his expression, as he continued speaking in a righteous manner. Miao Yi, this elder only wants to know, do you know where the ancient Goo King is? Miao Yi didn't reply, but only looked at him quietly, as she gave a light smile. Yi Qing Luo walked up, as she placed one hand on Miao Yi's shoulder, as a similarly treacherous sneer surfaced on her gorgeous face. Miao Yi Xiong and Miao Rongrong had schemed to frame me and the Overlord, so aren't they already imprisoned in Qinghua sect's underground prison by sect master Yin? No one is allowed to visit them. Her voice was very gentle, with a tinge of a young lady's unique sweetness. Like pearls falling onto a plate, it was extremely pleasing to the ears. But every single word that she said was like a bolt of thunder, exploding heavily in the few elders' hearts. They hadn't even had the time to digest this bolt of thunder, the shock and the emptiness in their hearts. What followed was a powerful aura that covered the sky and the earth, pressing down on them. I wonder how did the various elders see Miao Yi Xiong and Miao Rongrong? Yi Qing Luo's tone suddenly turned gloomy. Fifth Elder Miao instantly felt a chill down his spine, as his forehead started to sweat profusely under this powerful pressure. Second Elder Miao was the first to react, as he immediately gave a dry laugh, trying to break this awkward atmosphere. Miss Yi has misunderstood, what Old Five said is. Before. Right, that was before. Grand Elder Miao continued, it's not that we believe the previous clan leader's words, but to confirm, in case something goes wrong at such an important occasion later, losing the Miao tribe's face. The two elders laughed dryly, as they tugged Fifth Elder Miao's arm, pulling him back. However, Yi Qing Luo and Miao Yi totally didn't follow along with what they said. Instead, a cold smile hung on their lips, as a "do you think the both of us are fools" expression. The smiles on the faces of the elders could no longer be maintained. Great Elder Miao glanced at Miao Ji, who was standing at the side and had not said a word since the beginning. With a gentle smile, he said, we're about to head to the land of the King of Venomous Worms. Lady Miao, you should know what this means to the Miao tribe. This time, Miao Yi spoke. However, the words that came out of his mouth caused the expressions of the elders to darken. She sneered, to be honest, the Miao tribe has no special meaning to me. The reason why I am here and become the candidate for the Holy Maiden is not because I am interested in this position or the Miao tribe, but this is my mother's dying wish. These elders also knew about the grudge from back then. At this moment, their faces were dark and gloomy, and they could not say a word. Miao Yi's rude and arrogant attitude instantly ignited Fifth Elder Miao's emotions. What are you saying? Are you not from the Miao tribe? Don't tell me that the blood flowing in your body is not the blood of the Miao people. Chapter 28:40. He sneered incessantly, boiling with hot blood that no one could stop. Ex-eldest Missy is right, people like you, do not even have the Miao tribe in your heart. Old Five. What are you doing? Fourth Elder Miao quickly grabbed Fifth Elder Miao. The other elders' faces darkened, but they did not stop him. Obviously, they agreed with Fifth Elder Miao's words. Miao Yi's face gradually turned cold. Fifth Elder Miao seemed to be getting more and more excited as he continued to roar, in my opinion, you don't even know the whereabouts of the King of Venomous Worms. You just want to destroy the Miao tribe in front of all the guests and tribesmen. He roared the last sentence. Fifth Elder Miao was finally feeling better. His face was full of disdain and mockery towards Miao Yi. His gaze towards Miao Yi was also full of hatred. "That's enough, old five." Grand Elder Miao, who had been silent for a long time, called out to stop Fifth Elder Miao. He stopped Fifth Elder Miao and let out a long sigh. "Missy Miao, don't blame old five. He is straightforward and never considers the consequences of his words. But, what he said is not without reason." He paused and looked at Miao Ji. "I know that the Holy Virgin and Missy Miao have a close relationship. Why don't you say something fair? To maintain the dignity of the Miao tribe and stabilize the hearts of the tribesmen, our request is not too much, right?" Miao Ji had been the Holy Virgin for the past 4 years. She had been working with Grand Elder Miao to maintain the prosperity of the Miao tribe. Back then, it was Grand Elder Miao who firmly believed that Miao Yi was a direct descendant under the protection of the King of Venomous Worms and had been taking good care of her. Over the past 4 years, the two of them could definitely be considered friends. Grand Elder Miao understood Miao Ji's character. Miao Ji also understood that everything Grand Elder Miao did was for the betterment of the Miao tribe. If it had been anyone else, Grand Elder Miao's choice was indeed made for the sake of the Miao tribe. It was not too much. But, the target of their questioning. She was the niece that she had found after much difficulty. How could she not protect her? In particular, Elder Miao Wu kept using the words of the former young miss to talk about this matter. Was she purposely trying to disgust her Yi? Miao Shi did not agree with Great Elder Miao's opinion for the sake of the Miao tribe's reputation, as Great Elder Miao expected. Instead, he sneered and looked straight at Fifth Elder Miao. "Is your request not too much?" She scoffed lightly. Her eyes were covered with a layer of chilliness. Fifth Elder Miao actually knows that Yi is from the Miao tribe at this moment, and that the blood of the Miao tribe flows in her body. Why didn't you know about it before this? Fifth Elder Miao opened his mouth to retort. However, Fourth Elder Miao firmly held him down. This was the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. If the fifth brother dared to argue with the saintess, even if Great Elder Miao were to step forward, he would not be able to plead for old fifth. Miao Ji sneered as she looked at Fifth Elder Miao's suppressed rage. Her smile became even more sarcastic. As for, why did he appear during the saintess selection ceremony? Don't tell me you don't know the reason. Fifth Elder Miao's face darkened. The other elders lowered their eyes, not daring to look at Miao Ji's face. When Miao Yi Xiong was still in power. When Miao Rongrong was still Missy Miao. Miao Yi's existence was their humiliation. Miao Yi left the Miao tribe because Miao Yi Xiong and Miao Rongrong forced her to. Now, she came back because. Chapter 2841. Miao Ji's words made Grand Elder Miao speechless. He sized up Miao Ji and Miao Yi. This pair of family members who had been separated for many years had finally reunited. From Miao Ji's point of view, it was impossible for her to be like before, where everything was for the benefit of the Miao tribe. Furthermore, based on his understanding of Miao Ji, for Miao Ji to put down her identity as the Holy Maiden and say such things, it was obvious that she was angry. Great Elder Miao calmed his restless heart. At the same time, he was observing the current situation. In his mind, he was quickly thinking of a way to deal with it. He would stand at the entrance of the saintess courtyard, waiting for Miao Yi. He was just worried that Miao Rongrong's words would come true. The more Miao Yi didn't want him to see the Gu King before the ceremony began, the more Miao Yi wouldn't let him. Grand Elder Miao, who had been brainwashed by Miao Rongrong, was eager to protect the reputation of the Miao tribe. But the more he suspected that Miao Yi and the King of Venomous Worms had nothing to do with each other. If the King of Venomous Worms was not with Miao Yi, then the inheritance ceremony of the King of Venomous Worms would not be able to proceed as planned, not to mention the Miao tribe's face was completely swept away. Once the other guests and clansmen knew that the Miao tribe's most treasured ancient Gu King had disappeared, what kind of devious thoughts did he have? If the ancient Gu King fell into the hands of someone with ulterior motives, the Miao tribe would definitely be affected. The more Grand Elder Miao thought about it, the more nervous he felt. He was even more determined to not leave until he saw the Gu King with his own eyes. Whereas, Yi Qing Luo, who was releasing her powerful might by the side, maintained that faintly discernible sneer on her face. A pair of charming eyes stared straight at the few of them. It made their hair stand on end. Great Elder Miao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. In his heart, he felt a little resentful towards Fifth Elder Miao. Knowing that Yi Qing Luo, Miao Rongrong and the others had a deep grudge. And he had to mention Miao Rongrong in front of Yi Qing Luo. Wasn't this forcing Yi Qing Luo to interfere in this matter? Great Elder Miao looked at Miao Zhi's gloomy face again. After some hesitation, he decided to start with Miao Zhi. Before he could say anything, Grand Elder Miao saw the girl with a calm expression on her face slowly walk past Miao Zhi and toward Fifth Elder Miao. It was Miao Yi. The other elders were stunned by Miao Yi's sudden action. Fifth Elder Miao's livid and furious face also revealed a panicked expression. You. What do you want to do? Miao Yi's steps were slow. When he was 3 steps away from Fifth Elder Miao, he stopped. There was a smile on her face, and there was a smile in her eyes as well. However, his laughter was filled with contempt, as if he was challenging Fifth Elder Miao's dignity. Fifth Elder Miao had a tyrannical temper to begin with, so how could he endure Miao Yi's mockery? In an instant, Fifth Elder Miao's face and neck turned red. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he pounced towards Miao Yi. Fortunately, Fourth Elder Miao understood Fifth Elder Miao's personality. Before Fifth Elder Miao could fly into a rage, Fourth Elder Miao hurriedly held on to Fifth Elder Miao with both hands, preventing him from rushing to his head. Facing Fifth Elder Miao's ferocious face, which was baring his fangs and glaring his eyes, Miao Yi could not help but tremble. Miao Yi just stood there, as she gave a contemptuous and ridiculing smile. Following that, she raised up one finger and spoke calmly, "Since elders have accused me of so many crimes in front of me, then I will answer all of you one question at a time." Chapter 2842. Miao Yi's voice paused as she slowly smiled, "So it's reasonable for me to stand on Miao tribe's turf." The few elders looked at each other in dismay, not saying a word. Immediately following that, Miao Yi raised her second finger, too. "I concealed my ability because I want to live." After she said that, the few elders' expressions had a subtle change. Indeed, if Miao Yi hadn't concealed her ability back then, the her who had yet to grow up, she would absolutely die in Miao Rongrong and Madame Miao's hands. If it was them, they would also make the same choice. Momentarily, the few elders' gazes started to wander. Pfft! A light laugh was heard from the side. This laughter was as melodious as a silver bell. Yi Qing Luo hugged Bear with both her hands as her face was filled with a smile which didn't look like a smile. She looked at the few elders' different expressions as she ridiculed, "Fifth Elder Miao can ask such a brainless question. I'm really worried about your brain. A person with this kind of brain like yours can become the Miao tribe's 5th elder. TSK, no wonder Miao tribe has been going downhill for so many years." You. 5th Elder Miao was so infuriated that his eyes turned red as he gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly, struggling with all his might in an attempt to break free from 4th Elder Miao. 4th Elder Miao suppressed his voice. Calm down, calm down. That's Yi Qing Luo, the person whom the Overlord dotes on. 5th Elder Miao was so infuriated that his chest kept heaving up and down, but he could only suppress it in his heart. Yi Qing Luo strolled over lazily as her gaze swept past the few elders in front of her. Not only is 5th Elder Miao's brain not working well, even his words are contradictory. It's so amusing. Yi Qing Luo's expression changed slightly. She raised her hand as her slender fingers pressed against her lower jaw, putting on an unfathomable look as she sneered. One moment, you said Yi was coveting Miao tribe's power, coveting Miao tribe's sacred maiden position, and the next moment, it changed to Yi wanting to destroy Miao tribe. She paused as a chilly smile appeared between her brows. The speed of her speech also slowed down as she said word by word, "Don't you feel that your words are simply too stupid?" Fifth Elder Miao's face turned as black as charcoal. He gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds. The other elders looked at each other in dismay. The more they looked, the worse their expressions became. The smile on Yi Qing Luo's lips grew even more radiant. It was like a blooming rose, exuding a coquettish aura. You all are truly laughable. Yesterday, you all thought that Yi was a rare Miaogu genius, and racked your brains to make Yi stay. But today, all of you are doubting Yi again. Yi Qing Luo's ridiculing laughter made those few elders instantly feel ashamed. I'll say it one last time. Miao Yi's elegant voice sounded out calmly. I chose the Miao tribe and chose to participate in the Holy Maiden selection ceremony because of my mother's dying wish. For my mother's sake, I cannot destroy the Miao tribe. After all, no matter how unbearable this place was, it was also the place where her mother and aunt had been saved. It was also the place where she grew up. Of course, Miao Yi wouldn't say these words out loud. Great Elder Miao stared into Miao Yi's eyes for a long time. In the end, he was defeated. His arms drooped down as he clenched his fists tightly. Forget it. Since you're the one who passed the selection's final round, and Sacred Maiden has already acknowledged you, this elder will believe you this time. Star. Chapter 28:43. Saying that, Grand Elder Miao bowed towards Miao Ji and led the other elders back to prepare for the ceremony. They had barely taken a few steps. A young lady's chilly voice was heard from behind. Wait a minute. Grand Elder Miao and the others' hearts tightened. Hearing this voice, they felt a surge of coldness. Their feet subconsciously stopped. The young lady's chilly voice rang once again, and this time, there was a hint of a smile. Elders, don't be in a hurry to leave. You've already asked clearly what you wanted to ask, so next, it's my turn. His voice made the elders feel as if a heavy weight was pressing down on them once again. Grand Elder Miao was the first to turn his head back as a Maitreya Buddha-like smile hung on his face. Time is pressing and we still have many things to prepare. If Miss Yi has anything to ask us, why not we wait for the King of Venomous Worms to acknowledge the inheritance ceremony before we discuss in detail? I've always not had much patience. Yi Qing Luo replied straightforwardly, if I'm impatient, I can't guarantee that I won't get angry in the middle of the ceremony. Her pink lips rose slightly as she smiled lazily. Her tone sounded like a young lady complaining, with a hint of coquettishness. But the few elders could hear the threat in the young lady's words. The expressions of the few elders instantly turned ugly. To be threatened by a young lass. They had lived for more than half of their lives and had always been respected. How could they feel at ease? But, because of Yi Qing Luo's status, they didn't dare to show their anger. Hurry and ask what you want to ask. If you delay the King of Venomous Worms' inheritance ceremony, you will bear the consequences alone. Fifth Elder Miao was originally very aggrieved, and on seeing Yi Qing Luo's arrogance, how could he bear with his anger? Especially Fifth Elder Miao, who was intentionally brainwashed by someone. He totally disliked Yi Qing Luo. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have been released. Yi Qing Luo didn't beat around the bush as she directly looked into the few elders' eyes and asked. Fifth Elder Miao's eyes opened wide. What nonsense are you talking about? Grand Elder Miao's eyes flashed as he immediately stood in front of Fifth Elder Miao. putting on his signature amiable smile. Has Missy misunderstood something? The former chief and the former Missy did such a shameful thing to the Meow tribe. How could they be released? As he spoke, he gave second elder Meow a look. He gestured to second elder Meow to drag fifth elder Meow away. Then, he continued with a smile. Old Fifth's words were said by the former first Miss and Old Fifth. Old Fifth had always been on good terms with the former clan leader, so he always remembered these words. That's why there was such a misunderstanding. Second elder Meow and fourth elder Meow pulled fifth elder Meow away. Meow Yi noticed the commotion and frowned. He was about to open his mouth to stop her. But he caught a glimpse of Yi Qing Luo's glare. Meow Yi was stunned and stopped what she was about to say. He could only watch as fifth elder Meow was dragged away. Seeing this, Grand Elder Meow breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. The smile on his face became even more amiable. I will find an opportunity to explain the matter regarding the former clan chief and eldest young miss to Old Fifth. Yi Qing Luo only smiled gently but didn't continue the conversation. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.